You're listening to the Gold Biz Podcast, episode number 55. So, I know that reels in video marketing can be so overwhelming, especially because it's fairly new within the last couple of years. And we're all trying to make that transition and adjustment to it. So, it can just be really overwhelming. But to have a really new and fresh perspective on how to approach it and the mindset to have on it makes all the difference, and it makes the biggest difference in how you're showing up and how you approach it. So today's guest, I have Nathan Chanski, and he is going to break it down and talk all about his perspective and how he has been able to grow his following and grow his audience so much by using reels and TikTok and video marketing, and how we can actually do that as well.
You're listening to the Gold Biz Podcast with Rachel Traxler, a traveling wedding photographer turned creative business entrepreneur. Each week, Rachel brings you purpose-driven action to become the ambitious entrepreneur you are meant to be. We'll dive into topics such as life, business, failures and successes, and being the best version of yourself you can be. This is a warm and positive space for all creative entrepreneurs to come together, inspire, and grow. Because every day is an opportunity to shine here at the Gold Biz Podcast. Now here's your host, Rachel Traxler.
Hello, sunshines, and welcome back to the Gold Biz Podcast with me, your host, Rachel Traxler. Again, today we have with us Nathan Chanski, who's going to break down all the ins and outs and his perspective on reels and video marketing and how we can really utilize that and leverage that in our business for good and for the better, and how to just easily show up and kind of really break it down. So today is a really, really good episode. And if you haven't already, make sure you screenshot and share this episode to your stories and tag me at Rachel Traxler so that I can know which episodes you're loving the most and also share the love in return. So without further ado, let's welcome Nathan onto the podcast. I am so excited for today. We have with us Nate Chanski. He is just the absolute expert in all things reels, all things video marketing. I'm so honored to have you here, Nate. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Wow, that is definitely a very high
Rightfully
honor to
so,
give
right?
me. Right. Oh my gosh. So good to be here, though. Thank you for having me.
Just a nice, good, warm welcome on for you.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and give yourself a little intro too?
Absolutely. So, basically, I'll keep it short, but still comprehensive. So, I started as a wedding photographer probably, oh man, like I would say 3 years ago is when I started my business, but then I've been shooting like with a camera in my hand very casually for like the past decade. So I have absolutely loved what I do. And I started my business, I think it was, yeah, like whatever, 3 years ago now, a little past 3 years. And I just started kind of like shooting with couples. And I noticed that that was just something that I absolutely loved. It developed into a photography career. And then I absolutely loved it, but I can't say that I'm that type of person who I started my photography career and it was just like, oh, perfect, smooth sailing, like the rest of the time. It definitely, I had to go through a lot of like learning experiences and a lot of trial and error and mistakes. And then, I feel like probably back in 2020, it was like this like renaissance moment for me, I guess. I just feel like my entire business shifted. I also got married that year, which was like very transformative for me, to like be a husband for the first time and actually to be like leading a family and a wife. And so after that, that's when things really transformed for me. Then I started getting into like just sharing my knowledge just like very casually in 2021, and just kind of seeing where that would go. And then that's kind of what brings me here today to 2022. Good grief, I almost said 2023. But
Oh,
yep, that's who I am. I'm a photographer, wedding photographer, and I also am a photography educator as well, so it's great.
that is so cool. You do all the things. And I love that you kind of got married during that whole transition too, because that is just a
Yeah.
whole like another way to be like a different perspective to relate to your clients and
Yeah.
relate to all that too. So that's really cool. Congrats
Yep.
on all that too. But
Thank
even
you.
just within like the last couple of years, like you were saying, like kind of just you started to just kind of just share and start like kind of put it yourself out there. And I feel like you've been someone who's kind of been able to recently, and when I say recently, I mean like within the past like 2, 3 years, to just like
Yeah.
experience massive growth with just like
Yeah.
video and just like showing up and kind of just being yourself and like making reels and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So what changes kind of did you implement to make that happen? What did that
Yeah, absolutely.
transition?
And like to your point, like it's very recent, like within the past
Yeah.
year and a half
Yeah.
especially. Like I felt like, like when I was in 2020, the place I was kind of in was I felt very I felt like my mindset was not super healthy around running a business, and I felt like my mindset was very ingrained in like what so many people, just like whether it was like people close to me or whether it was people who were, just like I don't know, like not close to me necessarily personally speaking, but just would say things. And like especially to me as like a man and like a future husband or something like that, like say things like, oh well, photography is like just a hobby, and like you're obviously not going to have photography when you're like a husband and a dad, and that's not really going to be something sustainable, and like obviously you're going to burn out, you know what I mean? And so I would start to believe these sorts of things, and I would start to be like, yeah, like I guess I am going to burn out, like I really need a plan B here. And so I feel like what that created in me, also being like a very multi-passionate person, was it created like a lack of clarity, and I just felt like I was kind of floundering in the space of like, what do I do? So there were so many things that like kind of brought me to this culmination of like 2020 and like all that happened. And I feel like for a lot of people, there was that moment in 2020 for them where they were like, what am I doing with my business and my life? I need to like get a hold of this. And that was definitely me. And like my faith is so important to me. And like it was really the Lord that got a hold of me and was like, hey, you need to stay in photography. And I also want you to share what you know in photography. And so once I got that like clarity on my calling, I guess you could say,
Mhm.
that really helped me launch into something, and it helped my mindset. And I really stress like the mindset aspect of it, because once your mindset is healed and once your mindset has the correct just ways of thinking, I really think it permeates into everything that you do. And it really did for me. Now, I will say video, of course, was a massive vehicle that kind of like it was kind of like the outpouring of like what was going on in my mindset and what was going on in just like my heart and my life. And it was like all this energy and this clarity needed to be put towards something like powerful. And I was like, okay, like I'm gonna go towards video because I knew I loved being on like on camera. I knew I loved just like relating to people, and I knew I loved helping people. And I was just like, hey, I'm just going to do this. Like, I noticed that this is something that is becoming more of like a trend now. And obviously, trends come and go, but this is like what people are connecting with. So that's really how I kind of like got started in video. And it truly created what I would, the best way I can put this is I had like this very professional just brand, like just meat and potatoes brand of like Nathan Chanski photography, whatever that meant at that time. And then once I pressed into video, it became like this massive personal brand, like a very personal brand that had like, again, like a personality behind it, and it had like an energy behind it, and it had like a connection for people. And that was like one of the missing links that I was missing before, that I really found through video. So to answer your question, like I truly think it went from me being just very like stale and very like yeah, just like uninteresting, I guess, to like the shift to video where it's just so much more personal and so much more, yeah, of a personal brand. So hopefully that answers your question
Oh,
a
it
little bit.
totally answers my question. I have 2 things to respond to that. Isn't it wild the words that you tell yourself or the words that you hear from other people have such an impact on you, and it starts to like
Yes.
you start to believe that. So, kudos to you for just being really strong, like standing strong in like your foundation and like your business and stuff, and saying like,
Yeah.
no, you got this. And then the second
Right.
thing is I totally agree. I love that answer because I think, well, especially with like 2020, it's like such a pivotal year for everybody, but especially you and your story with your business. That's why I love talking about this. But the way people showed, like you said, I feel like a lot of us had just like meat and potatoes brands, like you were
Yeah.
saying, just kind of like stale, like what we thought we should be doing, what we thought we should be
Yes.
showcasing. And then it was this crazy shift that happened when
Mhm.
TikTok and like video marketing came up, is that people were literally just pulling up their phones and just showing up exactly how they were in that moment. And things got just real quick. And there
Yes.
was such a shift in the content that people started posting out there. And I think the importance that people realize, like, the shift also to, even if you are a professional service and professional brand, that like a personal brand is also really important too. And there's just been such a massive shift within the last couple years. And
Yeah.
so like what you just said is exactly right. And I feel like that is kind of exactly
Yeah.
what happened.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think that it's like to your point, there's so much out there in terms of like just brands we have to choose from, businesses that are marketing their whatever it is, like their content or their products or their services. And there's gotta be something that cuts through, you know what I mean? And I think like the biggest thing in 2020 was that there were so many like people that were just hungry for personal connection. Just
Mhm.
like I just really want a real person, living, breathing person
Yeah.
talking to me. And if I can't get that in person, then I at least want that on the other side of the screen. And so I think 2020 still brought on this, it was like this pivotal moment that's still impacted beyond 2020 of which is like we don't meet in person as much as we used to. It's just like the
Mhm.
way that it is. It kind of like it brought us into the future, like I guess, a little bit more because we did become more digital. Like that's just
Yeah.
the reality
Yeah.
and the facts. But I think what that also brought is like people were like, okay, well, if we're gonna meet digitally and if we're gonna like connect more digitally, I still want it to be real, and I'm still hungry for that real connection. And I think that's why video became such a thing. And so nowadays, I do think that like if a business is not really promoting in the format of like personal connection, doesn't have to be video, but it's a great way to do it. It's got to be that personal connection. It's literally why these massive brands are hiring influencers, because they need a person, they need a personality behind their brand, and they don't have one. So they will literally hire people to be their personality behind their brand for them. And so it just like goes to show you how hungry the market is right now for human connection.
Yeah, and how cool is it that we as photographers and entrepreneurs, that we're not brands that have to go look, like we are that face, like we can be that
Mhm.
face and we're kind of like the face of our brand. So it's like
Yeah.
it's easy and hard, because it's hard
Yeah.
because you have to do it, but easy because you can do it. You get to do it. And so
It's
that's like,
yeah, you're so right.
yeah, and like you're that connection piece. And I always tell people too, because I think a lot of people get just kind of down, or the misconception of, okay, like I'm more, if someone thinks of themselves more of an introvert, that, oh, well, I
Mhm.
can't really show up in a way because everyone
Right.
that I'm seeing is an extrovert that is showing up. And so they
Yeah.
think they can't show up. And that is just so untrue. Like, no matter what personality you are, no matter what type of like anything that you are, like who you are, people are going to relate to, and the right people are going
Yeah.
to relate to. So it's like
Yeah.
doesn't even matter what your personality is, like
Exactly.
the way you show up is still going to connect with the right types of people.
Exactly. And I think even there's so many people that want something different. And so
Yeah,
if you see so
yeah,
many extroverts out there, the way you can maybe stand out is to be like the introvert who will still show up. By the way, I will just say like if I take like a personality test, I test as an introvert. So
really?
like yes, I do. And I think a lot of people are shocked by that because I show up very excitedly because I am excited. But I don't know, for me, like this is so weird because I can't figure myself out. I guess people would call me like an ambivert. Like it just
Yeah,
depends on the day.
yes,
It depends on the situation. Like big crowds are when I become introverted. So
sure.
I just like don't like I don't want, like when it comes to like family photos at a wedding, I'm like, yeah, no. Like I'm just gonna yeah, I have to get my big voice on and really like muster it up. But yeah, no, seriously, like I definitely am not an extrovert, but what I am is like I love entertaining. Like I've
Mm,
always been someone, like even from a young age, who loved to be on stage. I love to be in front of people. I just loved that. And so it's like you don't have to be like one type of person. Like there might be a sliver of you that like works really well to build your personal brand. And again, like there's some of the favorite photographers I've ever worked with. And when I say I've worked with them, not like as a collaboration, like, I'm working with them as another photographer, like I'm working in front of their camera, like whether it's like as a model or like just whatever, like for my own wedding. some of my favorite photographers are introverted. In fact,
Mhm.
I would even go so far as to say that like my personality almost works better with an introverted photographer. So, and that's going to be different for everybody. So it's just like, you have to understand that like there's going to be your people out there that are going to connect with you for who you are, and that's why you have to show up exactly as yourself, or even just like as yourself with like a little bit of spice.
100%. I love that too. Cause even sometimes if you are like an extroverted photographer, people that want photos taken, they might kind of shut down around that type of personality, not feel
Yes.
comfortable in front of a camera around that personality. So it's like,
Yep.
I agree with you that some of like my favorite photographers I've worked with, as in being in front of their camera,
Yeah.
they're more introverted. And I just like, I like that. So it's like,
Yeah.
just no right or wrong way. And there's people that I really look up to and admire as educators and stuff that are both. And like it doesn't just the importance of just being yourself, I guess, and
Yep.
not thinking
Exactly.
you need to show up because you see someone else in the industry with success showing up a certain way that you need to do that too.
Yes. Absolutely. And then once you press into finding who you are and like just actually being who you are, I truly think like that's when the magic happens.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it can take time to do too, because I think a lot
Oh,
of
for
people
sure.
really struggle with that. And for me personally, I've had to try and fail with that. I mean,
Yeah.
I've had to be like force myself to try something and be like, that didn't really feel like me. That's okay.
Yeah.
I just won't do it again. Like, and
Yeah.
so I think it's okay. I'm like totally okay with failing and just doing something, be like, that didn't feel quite right, but that's okay. Like now I'll know in a different direction. And so I think that stops a lot
Yep.
of people from just doing it, especially because this whole video marketing, this whole like reels, TikTok, this whole thing is very new for like,
Yes.
in the terms of world of just technology and business and growth and marketing and all that stuff. So because it's new, I think a lot of people are overwhelmed or like I said, just not sure how to do it, or they're scared to do it and and it not translate right. What do you
Hmm.
kind of suggest for someone who is a little nervous of like how to even start because they're unclear because it is so new? What's
Yep.
something that you kind of did to just make those steps just to kind of in that direction to make it happen?
Sure. So I'm going to give you two ways. I'm going to give, first of all, more of like a holistic, like mindset way. And then I'm going to go to more of like a tactical way. And if I
Perfect. Love
forget,
it.
because I'm so scatterbrained, just know that that's where I'm going.
Okay, I'll keep it in mind. We
Okay.
got two.
Okay. So from a mindset level perspective, what I did, and it's not just like what everyone needs to do, but I do think this is important, is you have to have clarity on what you're called to do.
Mm,
And, like for me, that was literally like, okay, I know this is what God wants me to do. If you don't share my faith, it doesn't even matter. You can still have clarity on what your calling is. And once you get that, I mean, it could be as simple as like, I need to provide for my children, and I am not going to let the fear of man stand in the way of my building a life and like putting food on the table, or like beyond putting food on the table, like building like my thriving life. You know what I'm saying? So you have to get clear on what that is. Like, what are those goals, and like actually set them tangibly and like think about them. And like, I don't even know how clear you have to be, or set like financial goals or set goals for your business, or I don't know what it is, but make sure you keep those things at the forefront, because there are going to be so many times, because I had this, I still have this still to this day, where you are hovering over that post button, or you're like trying to figure out if you should actually like make that piece of content, or you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to show up today. And you have to default back to, what are those goals? What am I really, really striving for? What's important? What's most important to me? More than even if somebody in my industry thinks I'm an imposter, more than if like my friends and family that I grew up with from my high school think that I'm just like weird and kooky for starting my own business, more than like if I don't even know what it is, but like there's going to be those moments where you're like, people are thinking something, or like, I don't want to show up today because I just kind of feel lazy, or whatever it is. And you have to go back to the clarity. You have to go back to, why am I doing this? And what is important to me? What am I actually striving to reach? Okay. So that's the first thing I would say, is like, you got to get so clear so that nothing else matters. And then number two, maybe from a more tactical standpoint, I think it's really important when you first start out, especially with video, quantity over quality. Now, I wouldn't say this for the entire, like for anybody. Like if you have an audience, if you have a lot of reels or videos or something or TikToks that are doing really well, and you already know that, then you're kind of beyond the stage. But let's say you're just starting, or you kind of have put in a little bit of work, but not a whole lot. It's really important that you test and experiment, because video is so new. You don't even know what your audience wants from you yet. You really don't.
Mhm.
And so you can't like highly calculate what you put out just yet. You don't know. You don't have enough data. So it's really important, like when you first start, to just put out a lot. Like I would even recommend posting at least 3 times a week. I would recommend posting every day, and just being willing to show up scrappy, and just seeing like, hey, what do people connect with? Like I posted a voiceover on Monday, and then I posted a educational, more like talking head video on Tuesday, and then I posted more of a portfolio video on Wednesday, and then I post I don't even know. You keep going down the days of like what you're posting, and then you kind of look back. Let's say you do it for 30 solid days, and you look back. Okay, what are my what are my stats here? Like, what's the data that it's getting back to me? And you can't. This is big. You can't look at that data emotionally, because if you do, you're gonna see, oh, you're gonna be like, oh, well, they didn't like this video. Like the people out there aren't connecting with me. Like this is a knock against my personality or my humanity or like my personhood. Like, no, it's not. This is just, you're just looking at data right now. And I think it's really important to start. Sorry, I have something in my throat, but it's really important to start kind of like in that space of like, I'm just going to totally chill, experiment, see what people connect with, and then move forward from there. So then the next month, that like, hey, I think my audience likes a lot of this, so I'm going to start pressing into this a little bit more. Not that the other stuff is bad, but I'm just going to like, like take the data, analyze it, and then kind of like make some changes for afterwards. Does that kind of make sense?
Oh, it makes complete sense. And I agree. And I love all that because I'm such a done is better than perfect type of person. And I feel like you kind of have to go at video marketing with that mindset too, because I
For
think what's
sure.
holding a lot of people back is like, it's not perfect. It's not, it's probably not going to be, it's holding them back. It's like, just do it. And like I said,
Yes.
I've even posted stuff that I've been like, yeah, that's not it, but whatever. I'm just going to do it. And just like, that's
Yeah.
fine because it's getting me out of my comfort zone. It's forcing me to just do it and just post it and get it out there, and then
Yep.
I can really know how I feel about it. And I love your advice too about like just diversifying your content and then not
Yeah.
being like emotionally attached to like what performs well to you. It
Yes.
might just even be that specific one. That doesn't mean you have to
Yep.
stop doing that, but like it's going to
Hmm.
give you a good idea of like what's working for you and what like is relating. And
Yep.
that's a really good
Yeah, and
really
it's really funny. Someone told me this quote that like really helped me. I didn't think of it for a while, but it's just coming to me now. Kind of like something that kind of inspired me when I was first starting out with video, is that like nobody is watching you as close as you're watching
good.
yourself, and
Yes.
like by a mile, like not even close.
No.
Like, and that's something that people have to understand, is like when you post a video and it flops and it gets like a 3-digit count of views, nobody cares. Like seriously, nobody cares. Nobody even knows. No one is going to your profile and checking like, oh, like did Nate get views on this video? Like seriously. And if they are, like seriously, they need to get a job, because they probably don't they probably have way too much time in their hands. So I think it's really important to just remember that like this is totally experimentation, and if you're just figuring it out as you go, and there's no like preset like this is wrong, this is right with a thing like social media, because it is so personal.
Mhm.
So I do think it's important to just like, hey, give it some time, experiment, some quantity over quality right when you first start out.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like I've always had that mindset too of like, no one's actually or like
I know.
watching and analyzing. Like I've just always had that mindset too, which I think is why I've just always been like, done is better than perfect. Like no one's
Yes.
analyzing. And like,
Amen.
I just had to have that, even if they are, I just have that mindset of like, it's fine. Like it really is. I even
Yep.
have that mindset with like photographing ceremonies and stuff too, because I know like some
Yeah.
like newer photographers, I'm like, I'm nervous to be up there. I'm like, literally, no one's looking at you. Nobody
Yeah.
cares.
No one
It's kind of
cares.
that same thing of like we all think everyone's looking at us. Like they're not. I mean, if they
Exactly.
are, it's because they in a good way, not just because they're analyzing things. So
Yep.
I love that, and I even just like with all the types of content you were even like talking about and too. Like I always say
Mhm.
that you should always create more than you consume because that's
Mm.
going to help because I feel like a lot of people, especially because it's new, especially because a lot of us are like, what do we do? How do we do this? We're consuming a lot. And I
Mhm.
personally have found when I'm consuming is when I'm like, I'm not creating, I'm not taking action. I'm actually getting off track of what my brand mission is and what my true like heart is and like what I want to put out there because I'm getting it's just loud noise of like what everyone else is doing and what they're saying. And so I'm always say like you should create more than you consume, but how do you kind of do that when you want to do some like market research and stuff too and you kind of want to figure out what's good? Have you found a good balance with that? Because you do
You
create a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, to me it is like I can't echo more when you say create more than you consume because like when I go on social media and I'm not creating that day, I'm literally like why am I here? Like I genuinely like and I have so ingrained it in my mind that I am there to create. Like I am on social media as a creator. I am not there as a consumer. Like I've so ingrained that in my mind. By the way, I was not always like that. I used to be very inconsistent, much more of a consumer. And then it's just like I developed this habit of being the creator. And I truly think that like being the creator is something that makes social media more fun, more healthy for you.
Mhm.
Like when like I feel so like when people talk about like that gross feeling of like, oh, I just like feel drained by social media today, it's probably because they were excuse me, consuming more than
Yeah.
they were creating. And I
Uh-huh.
find for me still to this day, if I ever feel like that yucky feeling, I'm like, well, it's probably because you consumed more than you created today. And I also think that like if you are so focused, hyper focused on what everyone else is doing, it does suppress your
Mhm.
originality,
Mhm.
and it does just like really distract from like your voice and like the things that you have to say. So I do echo that. I think it's so important to actually create more than you consume. And another thing is if you have to like specifically put like parameters on your social media, like if you have to say like, hey, like I'm gonna lock myself out of social media for this time, like for me, I try, and I'm not like perfect at this, but like I usually am putting like a little downtime setting on my phone, and then I give my wife my password, and then I usually am not really able to check my phone until like 4 p.m. On Wednesdays, I check it earlier because I'm like launching a podcast that day. But like for the most part, I like to keep social media out of just my work day. So that's also another thing too of like it just keeps you off the app, and so you're not on it if you can set some downtime limits. And then I also think it's good to like if you feel like you do need some inspiration, yeah, like give it a little scroll a little bit, just make sure you kind of like set a time period for yourself, because it's good to like I don't know, put a parameter so that you're not just like aimlessly scrolling forever. But yeah, I definitely look sometimes just to like get inspiration and be like, okay,
Totally.
what's like the culture on here now? So yeah, I think it goes both ways. It's all in balance.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, because it's so easy to just get sucked in to a
Yes.
never-ending black hole of just
Yep.
scrolling. And so, like,
Absolutely.
exactly what you said, like, balance. Obviously, you need to, like, consume and, like, connect, and, like, that's a huge part of,
Yeah.
like, the platform too is, like, just making connections and connecting with people
Hmm.
on there too, but I love your idea of just, like, setting those healthy boundaries and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it. That was an awesome episode, mind-blowing perspective just to have and what it can actually do for your business and the power that it can have. So I really hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did because I really, really loved and enjoyed this episode. So if you haven't already, again, make sure to screenshot and share it to your stories and tag us at Rachel Traxler and Nathan Chansky so that we can see that you loved this episode and also share the love in return. So, thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. Keep shining, and we'll see you next time.